Good morning and welcome to the second day of the joint European Alliance for Apprenticeships and IILO high-level conference on quality and effective apprenticeships and international labour standards on apprenticeships. My name is Andrea Broughton and I am a Director for Employment Policy at Chorus, and I'm delighted to be your Master of Ceremony for this conference. After yesterday's lively discussions, we are today turning to the topics of national alliances, coalitions and networks, and looking to the future of apprenticeships. And we will have the privilege to hear from some of the most distinguished experts and high-level speakers in the area of apprenticeships. Just a note also to remind you to post any views and comments in our chat channel, because we'd really like to hear what your thoughts are as we go along. And we had a really interesting and participative discussion yesterday in the chat. So before going into the panel session, it is my great pleasure and honour to welcome the European Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights, Nicholas Schmit, who is with us live today. Commissioner Schmit will first deliver a keynote intervention, and there will then be a question and answer session in which he will be asked for his thoughts on some key questions. So, Commissioner Schmit, who is with us in Brussels at this moment, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Ms. Broughton. Good morning to everybody. Well, I would like to welcome everyone to the second day of this conference dedicated to quality apprenticeships. Today's discussion will concentrate, as you have already pointed out, on how alliances, coalitions, and networks are promoting quality apprenticeships in Europe and around the world. We will also discuss the future of apprenticeships. Given that the world around changes a lot, technology is changing, so we have permanently to adapt also the apprenticeships. Apprenticeships play an important role for young people. They often mean a young person setting their first foot into the labor market. They are a great way, and a very successful way, of combining work and training, and their employment prospects are usually quite good. The crisis has hit many young women and young men across the world. In Europe now, 18% of young people are without a job, and in some member states, it's around 40%. We cannot and will not accept this situation. We owe it to the younger generations to do our utmost to give them quality jobs perspectives, because 10 years after the previous crisis, we cannot afford producing a new lost generation. This is a major social challenge, as well as a matter of competitiveness. The successful green and digital transition of our economies requires apprentices. Some professions are deeply changing. Apprenticeships play a key role to fill the skills gap because by their very nature, they are closely linked to the needs of a changing labor market. Supporting apprenticeships is therefore essential. We have to encourage companies, and in particular SMEs, to increase or at least maintain the offer of apprenticeships, especially in this more difficult economic environment. We need to do this now, because otherwise we won't have the skilled workers we need in the future. But there is more. We have to promote quality apprenticeships. We are looking to rebuild our economies on better foundations. And this recovery should be built on quality job creation. It's not enough to provide just any job opportunity for the short term. It needs to be a good quality and sustainable job opportunity. Just an example, recently, the United States showed that they are aiming also for quality job opportunities and quality apprenticeships. A month ago, the White House discontinued a large-scale apprenticeships program which had been adopted previously, arguing that it promoted low-quality standards. In the European Union, we have not waited for the pandemic to promote quality apprenticeships. Yesterday marked the 3 years of the European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeships. 3 years since EU member states agreed that apprenticeship means quality apprenticeship. And it's more relevant than ever because it would be a mistake to cut down on working standards in the crisis. The pandemic stresses the value of Europe's social protection and high health and safety standards. Striving towards quality jobs in general and quality apprenticeships in particular should keep guiding us in the recovery. It is the legitimate expectation of young people who need to skill for good jobs. It is also our most sustainable strategy for companies that have to recover from the crisis while facing the green and digital transitions. Therefore, it is good to see that the quality framework has triggered positive change. We heard yesterday examples of national reforms that took place in the EU in line with the criteria of the framework and with the crucial support of social partners. But the recovery requires more action and more investment in people. Already last July, the Commission adopted the Youth Employment Support Package. Its main component is the reinforced Youth Guarantee, a policy tool notably designed to offer apprenticeship opportunities to young people. The focus of this initiative is on quality opportunities, in particular for those furthest from the labor market. This also includes that young people have to be prepared to the new world of work, in which digital skills are key. We are giving the European Alliance for Apprenticeships a new boost, because the Alliance is a success story. We count over 1 million apprenticeships pledges since 2013, and many of you here today have joined the Alliance, either a long time ago or more recently. It is clear that you have made the right choice for the good of our young people, but also for the economy. Those companies who have taken an apprentice or several apprentices will be on the winning side when the economy picks up again. They will have the skilled workers they need. And I count on your continued commitment and drive in the recovery, and I want to thank you wholeheartedly today. Our policies and recommendations come with financing opportunities. The EU has mobilized emergency funding in the midst of the crisis to support people and businesses, and we are now providing medium to long-term funding possibilities. The Recovery and Resilience Facility funding, together with the new European Social Fund Plus, are important opportunities for EU member states to strengthen their youth guarantee, reform their vocational education and training systems, and invest in young people. Many member states are planning to do so in their recovery plans already. Re- and upskilling is much needed precisely to facilitate job transitions. Apprenticeships are also adequate for those workers precisely who have to change their job. In order to push this further, the Commission has also adopted guidance to EU member states for an effective and active support to employment. The Commission is recommending that member states focus on helping young people, for example, by strengthening quality apprenticeship schemes. Let me finally look beyond the EU. The European Alliance for Apprenticeships is already active in neighboring countries. We are working closely with the European Training Foundation to explore possibilities to expand cooperation with other countries. And Mr. Onestini, the director of the ETF, will talk about this later today. In addition, the cooperation with the International Labour Organization is, in this perspective, very fruitful. We lead a common reflection on the future of work. The ILO supports the implementation of our youth guarantee. And from the side of the European Commission, we now want to contribute with our experience to the ILO work on international standard setting. And this is particularly needed in the context of digitalization and of the development of platform work. We value the ILO initiatives because we care about decent work. And to quote Director General Guy Ryder, quality apprenticeships are the gold standard to get youth into decent jobs. End of the quote. To conclude, we have to promote quality apprenticeships. This is a major challenge for the recovery as well as for the successful transformation of our economy and for good jobs. This is a common interest for governments, for regional authorities, and also, and mainly, for business. Therefore, we need large networks and more international cooperation. We have also to give good job opportunities to the young generations, especially in our southern neighborhoods. Quality apprenticeships have to be developed, be it in the countries of the Mediterranean or especially in Africa. Technology opens here a lot of new opportunities. We have to give the young people the right skills to take them, to seize them. I'm sure that today's discussion will be fruitful for all of us. Your contributions will feed into the Commission's report on the framework for quality and effective apprenticeships due later this year. It will also be useful inputs to the work of the International Labour Organization. Now we have to give trust in the recovery and to give good perspectives, not only to business, but also to all those who have to change their job, and especially to the young generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Schmidt, for that insightful overview of apprenticeships in the EU and, of course, the focus on quality apprenticeships. I'd now like to ask a few questions, if I may, so we can hear some of your further thoughts. So the first question is, what role will apprenticeships play in a post-pandemic European labour market that is increasingly greener and more digital?
Well, as you say, the labour market will be greener and more digital. And this means that the skills which are needed have to be adapted to this greener and more digital labor markets. And I think that precisely apprenticeships provide to many young people, but not only to young people, also in the context of lifelong learning, they can really provide these skills which are needed. If we want to build a rapid recovery, we have to be sure that people adapt rapidly to the new context of the labor market. So we have to invest a lot into reskilling and upskilling. And reskilling and upskilling can also take a lot of advantages out of the apprenticeships, way how to train people. Because finally, you have to train people in a very concrete way, very close to their real work. And that's, I think, this is something where apprenticeship can be an enormously helpful tool. And we have now put into together a pact for skills, which brings together businesses, companies, regions, member states, the European Union, providers of qualification, of competencies, of education, and precisely to organize a strong response to a changing labor market on one hand, and to foster also the transitions which have already taken place. You know, this crisis shows, on one hand, there are a lot of sectors which have been impacted very negatively. They have lost jobs, they will lose jobs. But on the other hand, we see a lot of sectors developing, creating new jobs. I had for a few days a discussion with other commissioners and ministers, a very important discussion on batteries. We are going for the electric mobility. So we are building up in Europe a battery industry, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. But we do not have the skilled people for this industry. So we need really rapidly react. And here I think the apprenticeship, quality apprenticeship, are the right way to respond to these changes.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, it's very interesting to hear there are actual real opportunities for the future. And in terms of the future, looking to the future of apprenticeships, what is your vision for Europe in the development and implementation of quality apprenticeships?
Well, first, I would like to give a quite optimistic view. I was attending some months ago a ministerial meeting precisely on the European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeships. And all the ministers attending this meeting just had one major objective. How can we improve, how can we modernize our vocational education system? So first, this shows that now it is accepted everywhere, in all member states, and also in many other regions of the world, that vocational training is the right response, or at least is part of the right response for training people, for giving them the right skills in an ever-changing labor market, because the skills people get today have to be adapted, have to be enriched during their whole working life. So I think this is the very positive message I got from the different ministers in the European Union. Now we have to build and we have to help also member states to accelerate the modernization of the apprenticeship systems. What probably has to be improved is the perception of apprenticeships, because too often it's considered to be still a second-rank way of training, of educating young people. And this is not true. This is absolutely not true. But what is important in that context is that you have to have a much more open system, starting with apprenticeships, building bridges to all kinds of further training during the whole professional life. So I think bringing in a very flexible, a very adaptable system in apprenticeships, that's very important for the future, for good jobs, but also for good for good living conditions and working conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. Just got a tiny bit of time left, so I'll just ask you a third question very quickly, which is how can the EU and the IILO strengthen their collaboration to promote quality apprenticeships in the EU and other parts of the world? And what is the potential and added value of this EU-IILO collaboration?
Well, I've mentioned that we have to extend our cooperation on this particular issue, promoting quality apprenticeships outside Europe, especially in our neighboring regions. I've mentioned Northern Africa, the Maghreb countries. I've mentioned Africa. They have a lot of young people. And they have to train these young people, and they have to train the young people with a perspective of finding a job. And I think in this regard, in this context, the European Union having strong partnerships with the Mediterranean countries, but also with African countries. I do not talk now about Latin America because there are also tight links to these regions, but I'm focusing on these regions now. I think here there are very strong interest to cooperate with ILO because we have a common interest to educate, to skill these young people, and to give them the right perspectives for good jobs, for good work.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So thank you, Commissioner Schmidt, for your insights and your detailed remarks, and really for taking the time to be with us today. It's been very valuable to hear your thoughts, so thank you very much. Okay, so following Commissioner Schmidt's intervention, I now have the great pleasure and honour to introduce a keynote intervention from the Director General of the International Labour Organization, Guy Ryder.
Commissioner Schmidt, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Geneva. Today we are marking the third anniversary of the adoption of an important measure, the European Council recommendation on the European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeships. And let me congratulate the Commission, and in particular the European Alliance for Apprenticeships, for their excellent work in promoting quality apprenticeships in EU member states. We all know that the world of work has been massively disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The strength and endurance of our societies and our economies are being tested as never before in a time of peace. Massive destruction of work, dramatic loss of wages and learning opportunities, growing inequality and poverty. Let me just cite one statistic. The ILO estimates that there was an 8.8% loss in global working hours in 2020 as compared with the last quarter of 2019. That is the equivalent of the loss of 255 million full-time jobs. And what's perhaps even more worrying is that this damage is not being shared equally. Women and young workers are bearing the brunt. We all know that the pandemic has severely affected skills and lifelong learning. And to find out more about this, the ILO, with the European Commission and other partners, conducted a global survey. And we found that nearly 85% of apprentices and interns had had their training interrupted in ways that damaged their long-term employment prospects. Nearly half of the enterprises and organisations surveyed had stopped paying stipends or wages to their apprentices and interns. And over half of these enterprises and organisations said that they intended to cut investment in staff training. In sum, we found that the effects of the pandemic on apprenticeships and internships stands to last long after the immediate lockdown measures have gone. Now, it's true that a lot of countries were able to introduce learning via digital platforms to replace face-to-face teaching. But not all countries have this ability. Not all would-be learners are connected. We live in a world of digital divide. Some have been held back, others excluded altogether. And without urgent and effective policy action, this digital divide is likely to get worse, and the skills gap it causes will be with us for a very long time. In this situation, a human-centered approach to the future of work is more important than ever. How to implement it is the question, and we have a roadmap, the ILO Centenary Declaration for the Future of Work. It calls for investment in people and their capacities, in the institutions of labour, and in the decent jobs of the future. And quality and effective apprenticeships tick all three of those investment boxes. The Centenary Declaration provides specific guidance for improving systems of skills training and lifelong learning. We need to support and to develop people's capabilities so that they have the skills and the resilience that they need to overcome future crises and to adapt to the rapidly changing world of work. However, to do all of this, we need to resolve some very significant challenges. Firstly, many countries simply do not have a well-functioning apprenticeship system. even though we know that apprenticeships cost much less than training via educational institutions. Secondly, in many countries, apprenticeships don't offer access to higher education or cover emerging sectors such as high-tech and associated services, nor do they allow for the reskilling and the upskilling of established workers. Consequently, apprentice programs are sometimes seen as old-fashioned, inflexible, and somehow second best. Our research has also found that apprenticeships and interns are at a greater risk of losing their jobs than are other workers, and this does not encourage people to become apprentices. The ILO is determined to address these challenges together with its allies, and we are developing a range of tools and strategies to do just this. They include a project on apprenticeship development for universal lifelong learning and training, and we are implementing this with support from the Government of Flanders. It aims to generate new ideas and policy options to modernise apprenticeships and to develop broader work-based learning. Another example is our new massive open online course on quality apprenticeships. The very first time this course was offered, it attracted participants from more than 120 countries. And it's also been a valuable learning experience for us because it required us to work in new ways with experts from the Commission, from CEDEFOP, from UNESCO, the European Training Foundation, and from other development bodies. And I think that this is an excellent example of the kind of interagency collaboration that we need more of to tackle the challenges that we face. In the same vein, we're engaging with the private sector, for example, through the Global Apprenticeship Network, to engage enterprises and employers' organisations who have such a fundamental role to play. And I want also to highlight the discussion on skills and lifelong learning, which is scheduled for our annual International Labour Conference this summer. This discussion will bring together representatives of governments, workers, and employers' organisations from 187 ILO member states. So the broadest possible range of views and expertise will be brought to bear. And after that, if our governing body agrees, there will be a 2-year consultation process designed to lead to a new convention and/or recommendation on apprenticeships, a new international labour standard to shape a new era of apprenticeships and lifelong learning. That's potentially a crucial component of a human-centred future of work with quality and effective apprenticeships. Broader stakeholder engagement, starting with the ILO's tripartite constituency, governments, trade unions, and employers' organisations, will be essential if we are to meet the labour market challenges created by the pandemic and build the future of work that we want. The European Commission is an essential partner in this endeavour, and I'm looking forward to strengthening our collaboration. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you to both Commissioner Schmidt and to Guy Ryder for their important and significant messages. Lots of challenges there, and that's a good overview of the challenges that we all face, but also a lot of optimism and a lot of opportunity. So we'll now turn to the first topic of the day, which is national alliances, coalitions and networks. And I will hand the floor to Tamas Varney, who is a policy officer at DG Employment at the European Commission. Tamas will share with us some interesting findings from a joint EU-ILO survey. So please, Tamas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to present to you in the next 5 minutes the results of a joint Commission ILO survey on apprenticeship coalitions, networks and alliances. The survey was just closed a few days ago, so these are preliminary results, and of course all this will be published in the coming weeks on the website of the European Alliance for Apprenticeships. obviously, we talk a lot about stakeholder cooperation, that it's key for quality apprenticeships, and this is also a cornerstone of the European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeships. So therefore, our purpose was to map all these apprenticeship coalitions and to identify their objectives, achievements, and challenges, and to understand which stakeholders are involved in these coalitions. We got 34 replies from 17 countries, and although we wanted to have a wider coverage, as you see on the map, most replies are coming from Europe. There is only one member state out of the 17 that is not member of the EU, but even that country is from the European continent. You also see that most replies came from the countries that are dark. So we have the most coalitions from identified in France, in Spain, Austria, and Italy and Denmark. If we go to the, no, we can still, sorry, we can come back to the previous slide because there we see that 30 coalitions were identified. Most of them are on national level. So 18 of the 30 coalitions are on national level, but we do have pretty much coalitions at regional and local levels as well. Sometimes there are at multiple levels. And you see in brackets one international coalition, which actually we didn't get through the survey, but we are aware of the Baltic Alliance for Apprenticeships. And now we can go to the next slide. And here we see who are the members of these coalitions. And what is very good, that social partners are very often part of those coalitions. So in 18 cases out of 30. And also education and training providers, we see them quite often as parts of these coalitions. And then we have either national or regional and local authorities. So national governments or ministries and regional and local authorities both are quite frequently members of these coalitions. To a somewhat lesser extent, we have businesses. So in 12 cases, we have businesses as parts of these coalitions. And in 8 cases, professional bodies, the chambers. So for those where the most different types of stakeholders were involved in a coalition, we counted up to 8 different types of stakeholders. If we go to the next slide, we see the most cited objectives. So why are these coalitions called for? Obviously, improving the image of apprenticeships is a major objective. Then we got many replies about the need to better aligning the training offer with labor market needs, also to foster cooperation between the stakeholders in vet and apprenticeships. And it's also important that many coalitions identify as an objective improving the quality of apprenticeships, and this often through performance monitoring and the training of teachers and trainers. And finally, we see as an objective provision of guidance to public authorities. On the next slide, we can see what achievements are there. So what have these coalitions achieved? Here we see an improved regulatory framework for vet and apprenticeships in many cases, which is of course an important achievement. Also, the provision of a framework for cooperation and communication for the stakeholders, and then very direct outcomes for students for whom these coalitions help to find apprenticeship placements. And also the increasing of the supply of apprenticeships is an important, very direct achievement of the coalitions. And finally, it's also very important that many feel that they managed to contribute to the prevention of early school leaving. And finally, the challenges that were mentioned. Obviously, the attractiveness of apprenticeships is still something that we need to work on. The supply of apprenticeships, at least in certain sectors, it seems that there are insufficient apprenticeship placements. Obviously, in the last 1 year, the COVID crisis posed a lot of challenge also for the work of the coalitions that were slowed down. And then other challenges were also mentioned, as you can see on the slide. And the very last slide is the list of these 30 coalitions that were identified. You can see the national ones in blue and regional and local ones in orange, and even some sectoral coalitions in green that appear there. So I finish it here. Thank you very much for your attention. And as I said, the detailed results will be published in a few weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. That was a very interesting presentation, and it's good to see all the actions that are going on at the moment around apprenticeships. And of course, there are challenges, but there's a lot of action, a lot of initiatives. So thank you very much. Okay, so next we turn to Nazreen Mani, who is Executive Director at the Global Apprenticeships Network, and she will introduce the panel on the subject of national alliances, coalitions and networks. And Nazreen is a specialist in the field of social policy, focusing on youth employment and skills development, and has been involved in the design and delivery of skills development and VET projects across several countries. She's passionate about learning and development, and particularly the role of multilateral partnerships in delivering on critical solutions for the changing world of work. So, Nazreen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and a warm welcome to all of the participants from across the globe. I've been watching the Facebook chat and seeing that we really have an audience that's truly global. And I think it's really good to see the interest in today's topics. And as you've said, I'm Nazreen Mani. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Apprenticeship Network. And GAN Global is an organization that really aligns closely to the topic of this morning's session, which will focus on national alliances, coalitions, and apprenticeships. And we're pleased to build on the dynamic engagements from yesterday's sessions and building and sharing on the good practice that speakers have put forward. And I think we've been privileged to hear from Commissioner Schmidt and Mr. Guy Ryder, who've also set the scene for deep discussion and debate. And I think Tamasha's input has highlighted some of the key factors to focus on, and I know that our speakers today will certainly touch on these areas. The collaboration and partnership are really critical elements in the creation of enabling this policy and funding frameworks that countries really need to put in place around quality apprenticeships. And I think it underpins the establishment of sound apprenticeship practices. Social dialogue, engagement, access, inclusion are also key to the success of the apprenticeship agenda. And I think we're starting to see more and more at a country and global level that these issues around building these frameworks for quality apprenticeships are becoming part of these national alliance and coalition debates. And I think these partnerships at the heart of placing quality apprenticeships in the skilling agenda across countries. We know that alliances and coalitions are essential to ensure that the design and implementation of quality apprenticeships are effective and relevant to both the world of work, future emerging skills demands and jobs, as well as the need to align training and delivery to the decent work agenda. Mr. Ryder highlighted these areas as critically important going forward. And we know that these elements are cross-cutting and form part of both the IILO and the European Union skills strategies. I'm very pleased today to be sharing this platform with 4 highly regarded specialists, and I'd like to introduce our speakers. And the first is Clara Basales. Clara is a director from the Bertelsmann Foundation in Spain. Mr. Eric Hess, who is a representative of the Federal Ministry of Education and Research from Germany. Shri Praveen Kumar, a secretary in the Ministry of Skills Development and Entrepreneurship in India. And I'm a little bit biased because I am South African, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Thabo Mashangwane, who is the Chief Executive of the National Skills Authority from South Africa. So welcome to all our speakers. I know that they have a wealth of knowledge and experience amongst them. And in particular, the speakers are going to focus on solutions, strategies, and innovations, including the role that national coalitions play in designing and shaping the quality apprenticeship agenda, along with the opportunities and obstacles when engaging with stakeholders, including social partners, as well as the solutions to drive these engagements. I think it's clear that these are multi-stakeholder partnerships. These coalitions cut across social partners to community stakeholders, to students, learners, trainers, etc. So we're really interested in hearing this morning what our partners can share, what our speakers will have to highlight, and the ability for us to learn and take the good practice away. So our first speaker this morning is Clara Basales. And since 2017, Clara has been the general manager of Fundación Bertelsmann, which is the Spanish subsidiary of the German Bertelsmann Stiftung. Under the motto, Better Work for the Youth, Fundación Bertelsmann currently develops two complementary projects, and these are the Alliance for Dual VET, which focuses on disseminating a high-quality dual vocational education system in Spain. And with its career guidance project, it aims to help schools better prepare teenagers for their professional future. Before joining Fundación Bertelsmann, Clara worked for many years as an employment lawyer in international law and in the HR and legal departments of multinational companies. So welcome, Clara, and we look forward to your input this morning. Gracias.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. And I'm very happy to be able to participate in this interesting event. And I would like to talk to you about the Spanish Alianza para la FP Dual. This is a network of companies, vet schools, and other organizations committed to a high-quality dual vet. And firstly, I would like to say that this is not a national coalition created by a governmental body or an administration, but it has been created by 4 institutions, 2 of them very linked to the world of companies, the Spanish Chamber of Commerce and the Confederation of Employers Associations, and 2 foundations who aim to improve employment conditions for young people. The Alianza was created in 2015 and has now 1,400 members. More or less half of them are companies, many SMEs, approx 400 vet schools, and the rest are other organizations such as business associations, school associations, trade unions, research institutes, universities, and so on. And also some public partners, for example, town halls or regional education ministries. So you see, it's a very mixed partnership. Now, the Alianza is clearly focused on quality. Each new member entering the network has to commit to certain basic quality standards. For example, in the case of the companies, they must commit to place dual vet at a certain level, at a strategic level inside the company. They commit to train the trainer in the company and to remunerate apprentices, which is not always compulsory in all regions in Spain. Now, the network itself, of course, promotes quality because the members can exchange experiences, learn from each other, and collaborate in projects of dual vet, also in events and publications and so on. And we have created some work groups inside the Alianza which work on topics related to quality. One of these groups have elaborated quality indicators both for companies and for vet schools, of course, on the basis of the 14 criteria established by the European Commission. And the Alianza also works like an innovation laboratory, testing out new solutions to unsolved problems, which afterwards can be escalated at a larger scale. And I would like to mention 2 examples. The first one is our network of advisors on dual vet. We tested out a network of advisors in 3 regions who accompanied and helped companies and vet schools in their first project of dual vet to make sure they had certain quality standards and they were successful. This went very well, and third parties introduced similar networks in other parts of Spain. Nowadays, there are advisors on dual vet in 9 out of 17 regions in the country. The second example is our network of young ambassadors, who are apprentices and ex-apprentices who talk to other young people through their own experience. And they also participate in research regarding quality. We tested this network in 2 regions. Now we are escalating it one by one to other parts of Spain. Which is the biggest challenge we face? Of course, we have 1,400 very diverse members. So the biggest challenge is to keep them interested in participating, especially once they have finished their first project of dual vet. And we know for sure that the Alianza will only remain attractive if we are capable of providing added value, of giving really practical support and being perceived like a visible and direct benefit. And if we are capable to give visibility to our members and their best practices. And in this sense, we do a lot of guides, studies, trainings for the different categories of members, and a lot of communication work in our yearly forum, an award, the platform, etc., to give visibility to the members. And all the time we are thinking of how to energize the network and how to create a sense of community. But the challenge remains, because it is not the same being a member than being an active member. And now I would like to share 3 thoughts with you, which might be interesting for those who are thinking about starting similar networks. First of all, get strong umbrella institutions on board from the beginning. For us, it was crucial to have such strong institutions very linked to the companies as founding partners of the Alianza. Second thought, start bottom up and making sure to give practical support to the members, because this will allow you to grow very rapidly and have many members. In our case, this has given us credibility when reaching out to the policymaker on a later stage. Nowadays, on one side, we continue giving practical support on the field, and on the other, we address the policymaker to make proposals of changes and innovations to improve quality. The third thought is that such a network is the perfect place to test out really brave and innovative solutions. So it becomes an innovation space to improve dual vet. And that is more or less what I wanted to share with you just as final words. Changes, and especially improvements in quality in the fields of education and training, are slow. They require a long time, probably longer than we all expect. And we need to be patient, because in the long run, only if dual vet is really developed with quality will it truly mean an improvement for the companies and for the young people. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Clara. And thank you so much for that really practical advice. I think, as much as you're based in Spain, you were able to share universal points of implementation, some really sound advice on how countries and organizations can consider these alliances, but also sharing some of the challenges. I think those are important. We know, as you said, these take a long time to develop these relationships and partnerships, and you can't give up in the first year or even second year or third year sometimes. So thank you very much. And we'd like to call on Eric Hess now. Eric is a sociologist by training, and Eric has been working for the Federal Ministry of Education and Research in Germany since 2013. Between 2010 and 2013, he was seconded as a national expert in the European Commission in Brussels, where he was responsible for the ECVET, the European Credit System for Vocational Education and Training. Prior to this, Eric held the position of Deputy Managing Director of the National Agency at the Federal Institute for Vocational Education and Training, where he was responsible for implementing the EU Leonardo and Erasmus Plus programs, respectively. In his earlier career, Eric, for several years, worked as a visiting lecturer at universities in Berlin, and also ran the European and national vocational training projects for a large training provider. So Eric comes with a wealth of knowledge and experience in this space, and we're really looking forward to your input this morning. Over to you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Nazreen, for your kind introduction, and good morning to everyone. It's my great pleasure to participate in this online discussion. You might probably know that in Germany, we highly appreciate a tripartite cooperation with the regional governments of the Länder and the social partners. Training at the shop floor level or any other actual work environment is a key feature of our dual system, so to speak. So thousands of business, and particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, act in this regard as a training institution in cooperation with vet schools, which are the responsibility of the lender. Actually, employer organizations and trade unions are the drivers to update or create new training regulations and occupational profiles. Sorry for this. All this is regulated by our Vocational Training Act, which recently introduced the entitlement of a minimum allowance. So we consider vocational education and training, or VET for short, vital for social participation and for our prosperity in a competitive environment, in a competitive global market, so to speak. And to make this sustainable, we have to constantly modernize our VET system, and with a view to equipping companies and with a skilled workforce, of course, and also providing individuals attractive career paths. So apart from our regulations, we therefore apply a wide range of funding schemes, programs, and initiatives to achieve these goals. And against this background, the federal government concluded in December 2014 the Alliance for Initial and Further Training 2015 till 2018, which was later extended and until the end of this year, actually. So the Alliance compromises alongside the Federal Ministries for Economic Affairs, for Employment and Education, also the Federal Employment Agency, business and industry representative, unions, and Länder government bodies. The rationale behind this has been challenges on the training market. So the demographic trend leads to shortages of skilled staff, and more young people are drawn to higher education. And in addition, there has been in pre-COVID days a mismatch between training places offered by the companies and demand from applicants in certain regions and occupations. So the Alliance have agreed quite successfully on objectives and measures accordingly. There's no time here to dig out all the details. But then, of course, the pandemic crisis hit us all. And the German government has launched a massive protection program for companies, including direct financial support or providing credit lines to cope with the economic downturn. And to the extent to which companies will survive the crisis, their role of companies as training providers will be secured as well. So these days, the Alliance partners are preparing a renewed, if you like to say, an updated declaration on actions tackling the crisis caused by the COVID-19. And then we also expect the extension of our federal program, Safeguard Vocational Training Places, it's called. This program provides companies that uphold their previous activities in vocational training or even expand them during the crisis with a financial incentive to do so. It was initially informed by the agreement made by the Alliance last year in May. So this year we have 500 million available for this purpose. There's also a discussion to fund preparation courses for the final examinations to support vet students as the pandemic has interrupted and hampered their preparation and their learning in companies, of course. But please note that all this has yet to be confirmed, but it's just in preparation. So, however, to complete the picture, I would like to highlight that there's a second national coalition in Germany. It's our National Vet Strategy, in German Nationale Weiterbildungsstrategie, which somehow builds on the format of the alliance. For the very first time in Germany, all the stakeholders agreed to set up this national skills strategy with the aim to empower companies and individuals to get ready for the digital transition throughout their entire working life. And this is new. In terms of demographic green and digital transitions, we experience a paradigm shift to an ever more relevant continuous vocational training, asking for richer and more demanding qualifications at level 5, 6, and above of the European qualification framework. And this initiative addresses the challenges. And at the same time, we are also well prepared to put VET on equal footing with higher education, because we have this amended Vocational Training Act 2020 that established a mainstream term for further training qualification at these higher AQF levels 5, 6, and even 7. And we underpin that through funding programs so that people are using this and getting further upgrade of their competences and skills. And then we have also a competition which is called Shaping the Future, Innovations for Excellent Vocational Education and Training. It's called Innovate for short, that try to establish a new structure building concept for that future-proof strategies and formats of qualification to underline this equivalence of VET and higher education. And this was also discussed and as part of this national skills strategy. As there's another digital project, of course, in white, which tries to establish a better connectivity of the different portals. And this is also very important to have an access for the individuals to get all the information they need. So to sum up, we have a rather sophisticated threat framework and regulations on place, but with clearly assigned roles of companies and social partners and lenders, as I mentioned, but complementary and coherent even to this approach. The Alliance was set up as a platform to agree on fast responses to new challenges, to meet the training market developments, and to cope with the COVID crisis lately. So it's not a legal tool, but it's a rather kind of soft governance structure, a consensual self-understanding where we can generate agreement and ownership and commitment and stimulate exchange and develop a shared approach in many respects. Well, this is quite important to underline that you have to make sure that relevant stakeholders really develop ownership of institutes to take the next step. That's very short what I would like to present for the discussion, and I do hope that I was not too lengthy. Thanks for that.
Perfect. Thank you, Eric. Not lengthy at all. In fact, we could probably spend the whole day unpacking this institution. But I think what's fascinating for me is a very old system, such as the German apprenticeship model, is one that's still under review and responding rapidly to the innovations in the changing world of work. I think that is key. And the other is the role of stakeholders in shaping that direction. I think that's critically important. You're not leaving it just to government to take the lead. You're really bringing in the key partners and stakeholders in this process. So thank you very much for your insights and for sharing with us. If I can then turn over to Shri Praveen Kumar, who is the Secretary from the Ministry of Skills, Development and Entrepreneurship. And we're very pleased to have you join us today, sir. We know that you have had very varying roles, important roles in state government as well as in central government in India, working in policy formulation and the implementation of various programs. and a very knowledgeable individual who's also gone the apprenticeship route and the technical route. You have your BTech and MTech in metallurgy. You have gone the academic route by having the postgraduate diplomas in business administration, public administration, as well as the masters in social science. So well-rounded bureaucrat who I think understands the practical elements of vocational and technical education. So we're very pleased to hear from you this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Najib, and a very warm good morning to everyone who are tuned in. As you know, India being a very ancient country, so we had an old tradition of apprenticeship right from ancient days, what is called the master discipline tradition, where the master craftsmen used to train new disciples who grew into masters themselves. Same thing has continued even now, though it has been formalized. The apprenticeship has been formalized in India through an Act of Parliament in 1961. And this Act of Parliament also has gone through various changes based on the demands of the time. The last one has been in 2014, and now we are actively considering more changes based on the experience of the last 5 years. As far as apprenticeship coalitions are concerned, India has both formal and informal coalitions. The Act itself provides for a central apprenticeship council at all India level and even at the state level, where state apprenticeship councils are there. And these councils have stakeholders, all stakeholders from the industry, public, academia, government, from students, representatives, and they are both advisory bodies. And normally any changes in the act or in the policy, they are the first door where who are consulted, whose views are taken into account, and they also do kind of a advocacy role where they try to suggest changes which need to be brought out in the apprenticeship system so that improvement can be done. Some statutory responsibility has also been given to them in form of a dispute resolution bodies. When there is a dispute between two parties during apprenticeship, they are the final authority to decide as an appellate body. As far as non-government sector is there is no formal pan-India apprenticeship coalitions, but there are a lot of small, what I will call pressure groups. The industry groups are there, various sectors have their own groups. The chambers of commerce are there. There are 4 all India chambers of commerce, and all of them have a skilling wing, in which apprenticeship is one of the major verticals in the skilling wings. And the skill universities are there. We have 6 to 7 skill universities who themselves they form informal coalitions, but no formal coalition, national coalition is there outside the government system. But what we do normally, we have a very, very detailed stakeholder consultations normally whenever some new policy or new change in act is concerned. Like I said initially that we are planning to change our act to bring in new things. And we had a very detailed stakeholder consultations over 1 week with different groups. And all the inputs are taken into our amendment which we are planning. These coalitions also face a major challenge, I think, because the status of apprenticeship in India itself is not as good as we heard from Germany, and what we know of Germany, the way apprenticeship is the main vertical of skilling. In India, the apprenticeship occupies a lower rung as far as skilling is concerned compared to the institution-based training through vocational institutions, which we call industrial training institutes or short-term training centers, which we have. There more people go there. Normally, under the long-term training and the vocational training institution, we are having almost 1.4 million people being trained every year, while through apprenticeship, it is only 350,000. So that way you see that one of the reasons why this is there. One thing, our economy is mainly an informal economy. So, and in the formal economy also, the small and medium enterprises are larger in number, whose appetite for taking apprentices is low. Even in larger apprentices, I think the advantage of taking apprentices has not got absorbed by them. Even though we have had a study in which it was shown that ROI on taking an apprenticeship is almost 12%, which is very good for any investment to be done, and so they can take. So our major job, all these councils do, is advocacy with their member organizations that why they should take apprentices. So this is one of the major challenges. But based on various ideas, we are planning a lot of changes, like which will which will facilitate ease of doing apprenticeship. We're trying to bring in the concept of third-party aggregator in the statute itself. Also, undergraduate education embedded apprenticeship, so that one person does apprenticeship while he gets an undergraduate degree, perhaps with lower stipends. I mean, stipend is a challenge. No industry wants to give a stipend. Then a cluster approach, so that a number of medium and small industries can join together and give apprentice training across the industries. Then this informal apprenticeship, we are trying to formalize it in some way, so that it can be formalized, and so that we can increase our apprenticeship, if not 100x, at least 20 to 50x from what we have now. That's all I want to say now. I think if questions come, I'll be responding to them later. Thank you, Nazreen, thank you, Alice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. I think some very informal, but very, very important points, particularly around the role of the informal economy being incorporated into these engagements, the need for SMEs to play a stronger part in the training delivery agenda. But I think also important is that you have a strategy around awareness and advocacy. And I think you're looking at responsive policy strategies, which is key to building more interest and participation across vocational and apprenticeship training. So thank you very much for your input. Our final My apologies, my mic was muted. Thabo, we're looking forward to your input and to hearing from you, building on your extensive knowledge in this environment, as well as the policy development work. Thabo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nazreen. I had that for the better part of my introduction. You were muted, but thank you very much. Just to assure you that the legacy you left in South Africa with regard to skills development, in particular apprenticeship, we continue with that because your work speaks for itself. As introduced, I'm going to be simply touching on the coalitions and the alliances in South Africa. If we move into the next slide, that then begins to, flag the kind of alliances and coalitions in South Africa. Now, these are at national level as well as provincial level. I must say that these kind of networks and alliances are also simulated at a district level as well as organizational level. Now, the first one there being the Human Resource Development Council, it's mainly led by the Deputy President of the country, and ensuring that all role players such as ministers, as well as principals and captains of industry participate, captains in trade unions participate. So we really take an interest. And one of the mandate of HRDC is the apprenticeships development. Now, the National Skills Authority, that's where I'm actually coming from, and that's where Nazreen also served for quite a number of years. Our role is to ensure, this role is legislated, and is to ensure that we take forward supporting the planning processes of industry, of various skills council in the South African language. We call them SETAs, Sectoral Education Training Authorities, that they then plan accordingly for training, in particular apprentices. So this is what we do. And I must also say, all of these various bodies that obviously represents coalitions and alliances, they have a common thread, and that common thread is inclusivity and representativity of all important stakeholders, right from government to community constituencies. No, in our case, we even extend it to community participation, such as people with disability, women, and so forth, because we want also to ensure that we mainstream gender issues in whatever that we do. Now, I will not necessarily be talking to each and every alliance that is reflected in this particular slide, but this is a mere indication of the keen interest that South African community takes in driving forward the development of apprentices. Can we then move to the next slide? Now, in this next slide, this is just but one of our flagship, program, which we called Centers of Specialization, where we also having various coalitions, right from industry to institutions of learning, and those institutions they are in the form of technical vocational education training colleges, in the form of private TVET colleges and skills development, providers. So we really go to all of this to say, can we then come together, because we want to drive the agenda of skilling the nation and actually fast-tracking, massifying the training of apprentices in our country. So some few years ago, this was then led by the Ministry for Higher Education and Training to say, let's then have this kind of flagship program. It's a dual system flagship program. And as it is reflected on this particular slide, it shows that about 19 TVET colleges are involved with about 26 campuses. And these are spread throughout the provinces of South Africa, about 9 provinces. And we then selected priority artisan occupations, and that accommodated about 1,000 apprentices. Now, they are placed in TVET colleges for theoretical learning, and then further taken to companies for workplace experience. And this is how and it's also funded from the National Skills Fund, which obviously derives its levies from the levies as per the Act. Shall we move to the next slide? Now, this slide takes further the work of the Centers of Specialization as a flagship program of apprenticeship development in South Africa, which then says it is obviously having oversight structure, and that oversight structure is driven by the Department for Higher Education and Training, led by the Deputy General, of Technical, Vocational and Training, as well as Skills. Now, they also then establish work streams to then inform and ensure that there is enough and sufficient support to this flagship program. Now, there's about 8 work streams, and each work stream has a clear work descriptions as to exactly what is it that this work stream will be doing in support of this particular drive. For an example, the selection of centers of specialization, now that was to say where is the need across the country. Hence, the earlier slide, and that then shows that in a particular province, there is a need of specialized training for artisans, maybe fitters and tanners in Gauteng, and in another province, it will be a different program altogether. So this is exactly what the slide depicts. I only chose to show you this flagship program, but otherwise, as for the work that is done by South Africa around, apprenticeship development, maybe I'm supposed to have also clarified to say we are actually narrowly using this term apprenticeship in South African context because it's more about trade-related, fields. Maybe 2 or 3 which are not necessarily trades, but in South African context, we are also using the terminology used as learnerships, which then covers other careers. Shall we then move to the next slide? Now, in this particular slide, we are actually saying, apart from local and national alliances and networks in the country, we also then have international, organizations such as IILO, such as GAN, where Narine obviously serving, and many others that are actually assisting the British Council, and a lot of work has been done. But these slides simply demonstrates the kind of work that IILO has actually been involved in South Africa. These are a number of research topics that IILO, in collaboration with DHET and many other organizations in the country, are actually looking at to say how best can we begin to modernize apprenticeship development in the country as it is globally. So it is not only this, but then I cannot even remember how many times, Ashwan has been to South Africa to really assist, because he comes from here too. So he has been here, and many other organizations working together with South African, alliances to ensure that the work of developing the apprenticeship goes forward. I mean, if you're looking for an example to topic one, which talks to increase to access to workplaces in particular, we've specific focus to small, medium enterprises through apprenticeship skills system. And there will be many others, because we are also looking to say, how then do we formalize informal apprenticeship in South Africa? And we then bring along the quality councils in South Africa, as well as other role players, to say, please come and assist. Obviously, there has been challenges. I was touched by Thomas' presentation. I really realized that it's clearly reflecting our situation also in South Africa. I mean, the global crisis, such as the pandemic that is still hitting us, that actually created a drawback. But we also saying to ourselves, there should be a skills strategy led by the Department for Education and Training to come out of these challenges and then move forward as a country. Nazreen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Thabo, and my apologies for the sound trouble. I am going to blame the technology, the equipment, part of my ongoing lifelong learning to learn all these systems. But thank you very much, Thabo. I think you've set a really good framework, and you've shared this work that's been done in South Africa in a way that's really practical and replicable. I think that's the important issue. I think what we're going to do is, unfortunately, time is against us. When there's rich conversation like this, we do run out. I'm going to suggest that the speakers will respond to questions on the EAfA LinkedIn page, perhaps. We will share the questions that you've submitted to them. I think we will also ensure that Thabo slides, for example, are made available. And if you would like to engage with the speakers, we will also find a way to connect you with the speakers if you have any specific questions. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your participation. It was good to see the sound went off, because I had lots of messages coming through telling me that you couldn't hear. So that was important to know that people are listening. Thank you for your time. Thank you to our speakers for their rich knowledge and the good practice that they've shared. I think it's been a really engaged session. And Andrea, back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nazreen. Thank you for your excellent moderating. And thank you, of course, to all the panelists for giving us a view of what's going on in all these different countries, Spain, Germany, India and South Africa. It's been very, very interesting. And I'm sorry we don't have time for questions, but as Nazreen says, people can engage with the speakers. We'll have a look at the questions in the chat. So we're going to have a short break now. So make sure to be back with us in about 6 minutes, I think. So that's 11:55 Central European time. And of course, please carry on posting your comments and views in the chat. So see you at 11:55.
Hello.
Hello, Ashwani. We are back after the break.
Okay, so I'm at the right place, I hope.
We can hear you. You can introduce the next session. Thank you.
So should I start or?
Yes, Ashwani, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back to this fourth and the final technical session of this event. Yesterday, we started this event by raising crucial challenges faced by apprenticeship systems around the world. And then we also discussed how some countries are reforming their systems, the importance of involving social partners, and developing partnerships. Today, EC Commissioner and the IILO Director General, in their keynote addresses, emphasize the importance of apprenticeships for promoting youth employment as well as reskilling and upskilling workers in the fast-changing world of work. While stating that apprenticeships are a gold standard for vocational education and training, they also expressed concern that apprenticeship programs are sometimes seen as old-fashioned, inflexible, and somehow second best, very unfortunate. So they called upon the need for modernizing apprenticeships, especially in the context of future of work. And they are not alone. World over, many people are putting question mark over the relevance of apprenticeships in the context of lifelong learning and future of work. They are questioning whether this system will survive or not. So now it's time to call upon the world leaders on vocational education and training and apprenticeships to share their vision on the future of apprenticeships. So let me introduce you to the three eminent panelists for this session. First, Jorgen Siebel, Executive Director of European Center for the Development of Vocational Training. Second is Cesare Onestini, Director, European Training Foundation. And Borhang Chakron, Director of Policies and Lifelong Learning Systems, UNESCO. They are very well known to everyone and need no further introduction. And we have requested them to present their vision of a quality apprenticeship and how does their organization contribute to it. Also, we have requested in the VET arena, what are the future opportunities and risks that can be expected, and how do key actors and apprentices best prepare for these developments? Now, I would call upon one by one to each of the panelists, and I would request them to stick to the allotted time of 5 to 6 minutes so that we can take some questions and seek their views on those questions. So with this one, I say again, I say this is my privilege to moderate this session with these eminent directors from three key organizations. And first of all, I will call upon Jorgen Siebel to take the floor. Thank you, Jorgen.
Yeah, thank you, Ashwani. I hope everybody can hear me. And thanks for having me at this high-level conference. The future of apprenticeship. Well, if we want to look into that future, we better understand where we are at present. And that may be puzzling, because if you look at the wide variety of apprenticeship practice in Europe or even beyond, it may be puzzling. And that's also why if you could move to the next slide, why I try to make the slide that you see now look a bit puzzling. Just 5 text boxes across the board, and you may wonder, how do they all fit together? Allow me to start with the clear identity of apprenticeship. How does it relate to other VET tracks? Can it? Do we have a clear identity of apprenticeship, even at national level? Well, identity matters when promoting apprenticeships to learners, to their parents, and to companies. Identity also matters to measure and to improve apprenticeship quality and effectiveness on a common basis, according to shared understanding of purpose, function, and objectives. What is the comparative value to society, to the labor market, and to education and training systems? All these things need an identity. However, the identity of apprenticeship is not always clear and shared amongst the national stakeholders, let alone across Europe or even the world. And ambiguity has a direct correlation with the indecisiveness of the approach, for example, to the status of an apprentice. Is an apprentice a regular employee? Is an apprentice a regular student? Is it both at the same time? I dare say that apprentices deserve a specific dual status, guaranteeing rights and obligations related to both the education and the employment part, and to protection, particularly relevant now during these times of crisis. Ambiguity does not stop there. Take the type of the contract. Is the simple presence of a written agreement between the learner and the employer sufficient? Clearly not. CEDEFOP analysis shows that it is the nature of the agreement that seems to make a difference in terms of quality and protection. We need to move from simple agreements to binding contracts, but we also need to distinguish these contracts from ordinary employment contracts to acknowledge the rights related to the educational function of the apprenticeship. And in the absence of clear identity, a concern raises on whether efforts to increase quality are actually moving in the same direction, if they are all pieces of the same puzzle, if you will. So CEDEFOP has always advocated for a systematic approach to apprenticeship design and provision as a kind of conditio sine qua non for safeguarding a clear identity. Such a systematic approach must be based on a strong partnership of all actors involved, and it must cover everything from strategy all the way down to implementation. There's also a magic glue that supports cooperation of these players. In fact, it's the fact that apprenticeship is a long-term co-investment, where every party wants to see their fair share of the return. Learners want to see it, employers want to see it, as well as the state, or if you will, society. CEDEFOP analysis shows that in many cases, a stronger shift of responsibility and powers to the social partners is necessary at the decision-making level, on all kinds of issues related to the scope, the content, and the design of apprenticeships. Let me give you examples. One would be to identify for which sectors and for which occupations apprenticeship is actually most needed, if needed at all. The second one is to ensure that apprenticeship is based on a structured approach to training so that both learning components, school-based and workplace, address the needs of the corresponding qualification and do not merely offer some context of gaining a kind of work experience. And that also the learning experiences are not excessively firm-specific, but comparable and of value for the entire sector or the occupation. Finally, to define the overall duration of the particular apprenticeship based on needs and specifics of the respective occupations. Please note in this context that countries fulfill the European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeships if the workplace component is at least 50%. But to what overall duration does this 50% apply? And here clearly we must say, 50% of, let's say, 1 month would surely not do. It would not create the kinds of competences and skills that are needed to be successful in the labor market. A systematic approach to apprenticeship design and provision does not jeopardize any ambition of flexibility and individualization. I would say, on the contrary, it provides a unique point of reference and a solid basis for it. But profound change lies ahead. The twin transformations, digital and green, the new world of work, as well as the recovery itself, we all want them to be fair. And I believe if approached in a systematic way, apprenticeship will be resilient to the external shocks involved and efficient in its response to all those long-term structural trends affecting our economies. But besides quality, we also aim for apprenticeships to be effective. Next slide, please. But do we have data to measure effectiveness? With no doubt, the prerequisite for this exercise is, again, to have clarity on what measures against what. For example, who should actually be counted as an apprentice? Well-functioning apprenticeship programs ensure that what young people learn will match skills in demand, with employers contributing to the cost of preparing this next generation of workers across broad occupational sectors. It is through such balancing of interests, driven by strong social partnership, that millions of young people can be protected from the economic consequences of the pandemic. But apprenticeship is not a repair shop. It's also an enabler to grasp the opportunities that lie in every recovery. By embracing apprenticeship, we can make sure that it will be a job-rich recovery. And here I would like to make reference to what was said by Commissioner Schmid and also by Guy Ryder. It's a shame that in this crisis now, investment in apprenticeship has dropped, because now is the time, before the recovery really kicks in, to prepare our workforces for the skills that will be needed for a job-rich recovery coming pretty soon. But overall, progress has been made. And the European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeship provides extensive references. However, and let me say that as my closing statement, there's still a long way to go before we may talk about effective and quality apprenticeships across all of the EU countries, let alone across the broader globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jorgen, for raising very fundamental issues. You rightly emphasize the need to develop a systemic approach based on strong partnerships, and also the need for fundamental framework conditions under which apprenticeship may take place. Also, the importance of monitoring the effectiveness, and that comes also with the need for having the data. And most of the countries in the world, there is no effective proper data available on the functioning of the apprenticeships. And at the end, you summarize very well. We have a long way to go to have quality and effective apprenticeship, and that's what we want to go there. With this one, I thank you again, and request the next panelist, Cesare Onestini, to take the floor. Floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shwani. It's a pleasure to be here for the European Training Foundation, and it's a pleasure to be here with such important partners for us, the IILO, SADEFOP, and UNESCO. In the work of the European Training Foundation, we support countries around the European Union to develop their own education and training systems. And on the score of apprenticeships, we see that in the last decade, there has been a definite move towards more interest and more development in this direction. As Commissioner Schmidt mentioned, ETF is supporting this process, and we see that there is growing interest, but also growing experience. So there is a mutual learning that we can do from the experiences of these countries. And as Commissioner Schmidt said, this is also very relevant to the wider partnership that the European Union has with countries in Africa and beyond. If I look at the work that we do in supporting the development of apprenticeship schemes, we see that countries move at different pace depending on their local and economic conditions. We see that some countries like Montenegro and Serbia have moved down the path of dual education systems. Others are experimenting with different approaches, but we always have, as we have heard in many interventions in the last 2 days, we have always had the same players around the table, and we need to take into account their different perspectives. And the key perspectives are always starting with the ones of the learners on one side, the employers and the public authorities and social partners. All of these actors are rational in their own ways. They all want to do what's best for them, but they're limited by the amount of information they have at times, and they're limited by the time perspective they have, especially as we have heard, if you are a learner, you also have to budget what you can afford, where you can go. If you're a small business, you need to see how much you can take on such schemes. So the interplay within these actors is what we focus on. If we look at the learner perspective, as we have heard and as we have seen also from the experience this morning from different countries, the key elements are about fair learning conditions, having clear agreements, having clear expectations, and linking that to career guidance, support for the learners to develop their own profiles, and being able also to see that if they start with a path, they might be able to move into different perspectives if they see that they want to change. There is a sense that it's important to create this permeability between different pathways, and I think that's an important element from the learner perspective. Employers, as we have heard and as we see in our experience, focus very much on the element of quality of the input that they will receive through the apprenticeships. They have a perspective about developing the skills that are needed in their own business, but they also need to see that there is a fair sharing of costs, that there is a clear framework of reference for them in order to put the apprenticeship scheme within their other many constraints. Employers are obviously at the crossroads of many obligations. All of these obviously has been looked at, and Jürgen mentioned many aspects relating also to the role of the social partners, and it comes to the questions of quality and effectiveness, and we heard a lot about that. So from the ETF perspective, what we do, we try to support the improvement of exchange of information, facilitating mutual learning. We organize regional seminars for the apprenticeship networks with candidate countries. We try to open up the experience of countries which have maybe more of this, to share it and see it, but also adapt this experience to the different needs that we see in our partner countries. We also always encourage social partners to take an active roles and chambers where they are active. We develop policy advice. We try to also bring the example of evaluations. For example, in Montenegro, we did this together with you, with the IILO, looking at the dual education track and trying to show through the evaluations what are the benefits and what are the lessons that can be learned. And then we look also at ways in which we can develop through self-assessment, the tools like Selfie or so, how we can support the different players to improve. A few words about the challenges, because we have heard in the words of the Commissioner and Director Ryder this morning, the challenges are there, some of them linked to COVID, some of them more general. But I think the challenges can be met if we take a slightly longer perspective. And this is where the role of governments are still very important, because governments are the ones who can support by giving legal frameworks. They can support by giving a bit more medium-term perspective and increasing the cost-benefit awareness of the different participants in these schemes. It's important also that we, as agencies here on the table, keep looking a little bit beyond the curve and look at what are the transformations of the skills demands and skills needs, so that apprenticeships can keep focusing on these aspects also of skills that are changing and moving with the changing speed of needs in the private sector. Ultimately, digitalization and greening are the two areas that we are all very concerned about, but we see that these cut across now all sectors, and we need to bring them into our reflection about apprenticeship. And I think the conference over these 2 days has really put a spotlight on this. I will stop here, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cesare. You have rightly emphasized the perspective of businesses, specifically the small businesses, and learners' perspective, and you detailed also what is your organization's view. I think it's very important that without taking care of their perspectives, as the word over, the small businesses are the largest one. So unless their perspectives are taken care, unless the perspectives of learners are taken care, apprenticeship cannot be a mass phenomena. Very important. And you also laid down and clearly explained the elements of the ETF strategy on apprenticeship very rightly, and you also emphasize the need for partnership, and you gave examples of partnerships, knowledge sharing, learning from each other, and also cross-cutting issues such as digitalization and greening as part of the future work. Thank you very much. And I like to again say here that not only in this workshop event, because IILO has a training center in Turin where the headquarters of ETF is also there. And that also allows us a great opportunity to basically collaborate with ETF on nearly all of our skills development program, and especially on the apprenticeship. With this one, I thank you again. And now I request that our third panelist, Boran Shokro, Director of UNESCO. He had initially some challenges with connectivity, but I hope it is sorted out now. So floor is yours, Boran.
Good morning. Can you hear me well, Ashwani?
Perfectly.
Okay, then I have a problem from my side. And first, good morning to you and to all colleagues, and to all the participants. Congratulations to the ILO and European Commission for this very important and timely event regarding apprenticeship and the futures of apprenticeship. I think our discussion today should inform the work that we are conducting also jointly together in the interagency group, together with ILO, European Commission, OECD, World Bank, CIDIFOP, and other colleagues that work together to advance this agenda. I would like in my intervention to highlight three aspects that I thought would be important for us to discuss. First of all, I think it's very important that when we are discussing the future of apprenticeship and the work-based learning more broadly, we take into consideration how are we understanding the change in the labor market and the transitions in economies and societies. And I think it's very critical to understand that if we rely on the different analyses that are conducted, for example, in the context of Europe by CIDIFOP, at the global level by ILO, by McKinsey Institute, for example, we know that a large number of occupation will either disappear or change in the next few years. So that's an important dimension that we need to take into consideration. The second dimension that I believe important is we had, before the COVID, all the indication that the labor market is getting polarized between low-end and high-end type of skills and occupations. The third direction that is important is that informality is not shrinking, both in developing economies, but also in the gig economy. So informality will continue part of the landscape and the context that we live with. And maybe the last piece that is very important from a UN perspective is that the agenda for sustainable development remains a very important agenda. The COVID has exacerbated the challenge that we are facing, and there is an important focus on transitions, be it economic transition, and Cesare was referring to digital transition, green transition, but also societal transitions. How we have societies that are inclusive, societies that are peaceful, intercultural acceptance, addressing the challenges of violence in society. So there is societal challenges, democratic challenges that we are facing, and it's very important to have these perspective in mind. Now, these are broad direction, of course. The question is how they are impacting apprenticeship and work-based learning. Let me say that they're impacting them, and probably we'll see that accelerating in the next few years. First of all, if the occupations are changing and and some of them are disappearing, that means that the paradigm on which apprenticeship has been operating for almost hundreds of years, if we refer to the dual system, for example, of a transmission between a master crafts person and a learner or an apprentice. That model probably will be disrupted, and we will move from transmission to co-construction of the knowledge and skills. And this is, I think, a very critical dimension. If the occupations are changing very fast, if some of the occupations are disappearing, if new occupations are emerging, then the model that we use it to refer to probably will have to change. And I think this is something that I hope we can discuss. The second element that would be important is that if apprenticeship has to be placed within a lifelong learning perspective, then probably the model of apprenticeship that was thought only for young learners for transition to the labor market will not be sufficient, and that work-based learning and apprenticeship can serve different target groups, be it young people who are entering the labor market, but it can be also people who are looking for upskilling and reskilling or redeployment in different industries that are changing, shrinking, emerging in the future. So placing apprenticeship in lifelong learning perspective seems to me important. The third aspect is apprenticeship has relied a lot on occupations. So you get apprentices in specific occupation with an identity, a profession, moving from the periphery to the center. Probably that also will be impacted in the sense that, first of all, occupations are changing fast, and the identities will have to be changing also fast, and that has implication. This comes with challenges. I'm not saying that this is coming easily, but probably this idea of an apprentices for an occupation will have to be rethought, and it has implications, for example, on the certification, the micro credentials, and the link with the reform of qualification system that we can see. Last point from my side, Ashwana, and I hope I'm not very long, is that obviously job-specific skills for apprentices is not sufficient. All the companies are highlighting the importance of other set of skills, digital skills, entrepreneurial skills, critical thinking, and communication. And I feel that the communication skills will be very critical one. If we rely on some of the analysis and the importance of teleworking, the importance of working in hybrid form of working, then obviously the communication between an apprentices and its ecosystem, the tutors, the trainers, others will be very critical. Communication to learn, but also communication to co-construct the knowledge and skills, as I mentioned in the beginning. So what UNESCO is doing in this, and I stop there. First of all, we have an important work on the futures of education, and the work-based learning is part of it. The change in the work-based learning is part of the thinking how the future of education will evolve. And this work will be ready hopefully by the end of the year, and will define some new paradigms on how we teach and learn in the context of the futures of education. Second, we are continuing working with member states on policy development and supporting them in apprenticeship and in work-based learning more broadly. And we see countries' interest and employers' organization interest and union organization interest in work-based learning and apprenticeship. And the last piece is very important, is about data and evidence. Unfortunately, today, globally, we have no comparative data about apprenticeship, and work-based learning. Very little reporting. We have it by sub-regions. For example, in Europe, we may find some data. The diversity of apprenticeship models makes reporting at national, regional, and global level a major challenge. But this is part of the work that we are hoping to conduct as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Borhan. I think it's always fascinating listening to you and your thoughts on this issue. Some of the issues which you have mentioned have also been raised by the directors of CEDEFOP and ETF, so I will not repeat those ones, which are, of course, the data and evidence. You importantly mentioned also that how important to analyze the labor market dynamics, particularly in the context of these global drivers, how they're impacting. For example, you also mentioned societal transition, demographic transition, and also if we keep on and broad-based learning is required, not only in terms of narrowly looking at a specific job, but also broadly, because the occupations are changing fast, so people has to be mobile very fast. So how can a apprenticeship program also inculcate a broad-based learning system also? And also you also mentioned about the needs, not only the technical skills, but also growing need of core skills, soft skills, whether communication or the others also. And you are the one person also, you are also put a question mark also on the, I will not say question mark, but you mean to say perhaps is that clearly apprenticeships have to be modernized, has to, otherwise they risk losing their relevance. Not really exactly, they will not disappear, but may not be like the favored one form of learning. And you said, of course, various models of learnings have to evolve, whether those are a part of the work-based learning or apprenticeship to tackle different target groups. And I also mentioned about the future of education. With this one, I think we have left with some more time so that I think we can take benefit of taking up some questions with our panelists. And before that, I will also say, when he mentioned about working in collaboration and how apprenticeship can fit particularly in the context of lifelong learning, as our IILO's Director General mentioned in the morning, IILO has taken up a new research project on apprenticeship in the context of universal lifelong learning and training. And I'm very thankful to all the agencies who are present here, including the Commission, UNESCO, CEDEFOP, and ETF. They have all joined together as part of advisory committee for this one. And I think it's going to be another project where the combined expertise of all the agencies, and it also has many experts from all over the world, who will put their minds together and come up with some new ideas and solutions how apprenticeship can fit better in the lifelong learning context. With this one, I'll go to the questions. Maybe I'll start with a reverse order, maybe this time. So I will request first maybe the Borhan to go ahead. And the first question to him is, how can we work together to assure quality apprenticeship in the context of a rapidly changing labor market, skills demand, and global challenges like pandemic and the climate change? Over to you, Borhan. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a quite broad question, but maybe we can boil it down to, if we are speaking about the quality of apprenticeship, we are speaking about three sets of qualities. Quality of the job learning, quality of the on-the-job learning, and the quality of the interaction between the two sides. What I said earlier is that I feel that this archetype will have to evolve. First of all, because the workplace is changing fast, and the working modalities, the knowledge that is needed, the type of occupations, the type of industrial relation is changing. So the quality will have to change according to this aspect. And maybe one dimension that I think will be important is this: what I mentioned, the quality of the transactions or the co-construction between the learner and the ecosystem, or the apprentices and the ecosystem within the company. That's a very important dimension that we need to look at. When I come to the off-the-job learning, the question is the quality of the job learning depends on the quality of the training and vocational training system more broadly. So we cannot. There will not be an island. It has to be embedded in the quality of the vocational training system. And there are some directions. For example, in terms of the capacity of the system to be responsive, the changes in the qualifications, the changes in the quality assurance, the role of the changing role of teachers and trainers in this context. So that's an important aspect. And the third quality dimension is how the interaction between off-the-job and on-the-job learning will take place. I think this is the critical dimension, is that as both systems will have to evolve and the technology is disrupting it. And the technology is part of the problem, it is part of the solution. We have now resources and modalities that can help support the learner in their learning pathways with artificial intelligence, with other form of technology that are supporting. We have resources for blockchain use in terms of the certification that allows apprentices to build portfolios, to be mobile across occupation and across industries. We have technology that are supporting learners to learn of the job and in the job, and to blend this type of learning. So the potential is there. The drawbacks are, we know them as well. There are the learner's privacy and security that we have to take into account, the learners and the ethical use of technologies, but also the digital gap and digital divide. And I think it's very important to highlight that, Ashwani, in our discussion. Equity and inclusion will remain a major challenge for all of us. An apprenticeship has to contribute to an inclusive economies and labor markets. And the role of apprenticeship has to be clear in that context. One is, of course, how we fill the digital gap and how apprentices will acquire those digital skills, but also how they can access to learning opportunities that are available. And some of them will not have access to it, including in the most developed economies. In the suburb of Paris, there are people who cannot have access to connectivity, not to speak about people who are in developing context. So the digital divide has to be one of the challenges that we have to cope with as well. Thank you very much.
Ashwani, I'm so sorry, but I've just been told that we really need to speed up and wrap up this session. So I'm very sorry to have to cut off the session, but I think we need to move on, because otherwise we won't have time to have the next session, which is going to be moderated by Norbert. So I'm so sorry to cut that to a close.
No, thank you very much. I think, thank you.
So if you don't mind, we'll move on. But just to say thank you to the panelists, and I'm really sorry we had to cut off the question and answer session, because it was a really rich discussion. So my apologies to the panelists. But if we don't move on now, we won't have time to do all the things we need to do before closing. So I'm going to quickly now introduce Norbert Scherbel from the European Commission, who's going to moderate the next session. So Norbert, over to you.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to Ashwani for the excellent moderation. Yes, we need to move on. And as Cesare mentioned, highlighted the fact of the learner's perspective, I have the privilege now to give the floor to Mateos. What shall I say? We have supported the European Apprentices Network from the very beginning. It is a network which has been created by the European Youth Forum Endobesso, and we're very proud to have you, Mateos, here today. I think you are one of the speakers. You have even been invited to all over the world, the IILO in Latin America. I would not call you a dinosaur, because you would be offended. I would not call you a veteran, because you're too young. I would simply call you the star and the international ambassador of the European Apprentices Network. So the floor is yours. That's what you are, Mateos. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, perfect. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of the EAfA and dear colleagues of the IILO, and also to you especially, Norbert, thank you for this very nice introducing to me that I'm not a dinosaur yet. That's very happy to. I'm very happy to hear that. Firstly, let me also tell you that I'm very happy to be able to speak today here again and bring in the perspective again of young Europeans. This high level event of the IILO is something very important to shape the future of the apprenticeships. And I am very happy today that I can bring in the perspective of the European Apprentices Network, which was just introduced by Norbert. It's a network which is representing apprentices all across the European continent. My short background, I'm a trade unionist. My organization is CESI, the European Confederation of Independent Trade Unions. But let's come to the topic of today, to the quality framework. When the quality framework was adopted back in 2018, my organization, the CESI, but mostly the European Apprentices Network, and also me personally, we were very happy to see that our main demands and recommendations and remarks were put into this paper. Basically, the European Apprentices Network was developing 7 key priorities, and all of them were included in this framework. We strongly believe that these criteria are needed in order to have quality apprenticeships, which also help encourage active citizenship and social inclusion by integrating people from all the different backgrounds into the labor market. But international goals provide orientation, but they also require joint investments and implementation strategies. The time is ripe to dare more Europe and global learning, also in national and regional education policy, to adopt standards to sustainability and to intensify international exchange on excellence vocational education and training. Professional opportunities are significantly increased through resilience and sustainability-oriented qualifications, and thus jobs are secured. Looking at digitalizations, sustainability and globalizations, and also the diverse international goals, like, for example, the 70 SDGs, challenge the European vocational schools in equal measures. The associated transformation in the world of work and society also entail the transformation of the place of learning for vocational education and training, including the vocational schools, which need to be significantly strengthened. But what is happening now, 3 years after the adoption of this framework? We need to focus on a better integration of it into the labor market. The set out quality standards are still not applying in all the member states. This document is only a recommendations, and we all have to work as hard as possible that these recommendations, the standard setting, becomes reality to young people and to all the apprentices in Europe, but also globally. One of the main points I want to come up today with is the representation of young apprentices. And I'm very happy that we are having the European Apprentices Network. But for example, in Germany and Austria, we are having a so-called Jugend- und Auszubildendenvertretung, which is basically a young workers' council. And it is crucial in order to meet the needs of young apprentices. We need to be involved in all the decision-making processes and also in the workers' councils. This apprenticeship representations need to be done directly in the companies, but also on national and EU level to cover all the decision-taking realities. As a trade unionist, I want to stress out that at this moment, it's also important for sure involving the social partners and all the decision-making, but this is something that we could hear all over the last 2 days at this IILO event. The framework is bringing great criteria under normal working conditions, but we see now how we can apply it under the circumstances that we're living right now, especially as we believe that we will never come back to the world of work we had before the pandemic. This life situation shows us that the framework has to be constantly updated in order to protect apprentices. Also, VAT has to be redesigned in order to qualify young people for the future of the labor market. We heard today and yesterday how dynamically the labor market is changing all the time. And I just want to come up today with something about the green economy. We need a well-equipped transition fund. It is crucial. We are speaking here about a revolution of the labor market. If our continent wants to stay competitive after the pandemic, we cannot afford to leave anyone behind. Great transition needs to be socially fair, where everyone is having access to work and social protection. For this, we need a functioning Just Transition Fund, where we can finance VET skills not only for young people, but also for the older workers, to ensure reskilling, upskilling, and a smooth transition to jobs. Green skills and behavior should become part of a curricula to raise awareness of apprentices and VET students. Climate change and sustainability should not only be seen as a topic of itself, it should be seen as something cross-sectoral, where green thinking and behavior becomes part of our DNA. Appointing young people as ambassadors for sustainability, fighting against climate change means a lot of creativity and innovation. When companies or VET schools try to implement climate-friendly policies and actions, why don't involve also us, young people, in this process? In my work as a trade unionist, we have found out that our generation does not only want to work in order to earn money, but we want to work to make a change. And it's about participation. Looking, for example, at the movements like Fridays for Future, our generation wants to shape a sustainable society. Take us on board. One of the tools of participation would be the JFV, the Young Workers' Council. Looking at digital skills, we need to ensure that digital devices are used properly. We need a skilled workforce. For this, we need training centers to skill workers in VET and sustainable development and digitalization. Vocational schools have an added value because they shape significantly sustainable vocational and social thinking and action of young people and prospective skilled workers. They could do this even more effectively by improving personal and material resources in an appropriate way. It needs to be ensured that young people can continue their apprenticeships. We all need to do our best in order to keep young people on the labor market. It cannot happen that we are having a lost generation 2.0. At the end, I would really like to thank for this important event and also for inviting the learners' perspective and supporting us as European Apprentice Network. It's great to see that apprentices are high on the agenda, as it's our responsibility to make sure that young people are well prepared for the future, because at the end, it's not only their future, but it's the future for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthäus, and I think I was not exaggerating saying that you are the voice and the star of the European Apprentice Network. I think we all listened to you, and the messages were clear, and we will continue to support the Apprentices Network for sure. I think we need to move on, and now we're going to a sort of virtual newcomer session, and I can only send you virtual hugs now from Brussels to all the newcomers. We have slides prepared. We have in total today 11 newcomers joining us from 9 countries. And this also adds on the total number of apprenticeship places, as you can see here. And the next slide shows you the organization, which I will not spell out. I just want to highlight that some of them are coming from Apprentice Track Partner Consortium, as you can see. And as I said, I'm very sad that I cannot officially welcome you with a certificate and a big handshake and a hug, but we have prepared a small video. Not all of the organizations joining today are represented in the video, but it's nice also now to show you at least some voices of people who have joined the European Alliance and why they think it is important to be part of the big family. I just want to come back to the words of Clara, which I really liked a lot, and we can learn a lot from the Alianza in Spain, because she said that keep the members interested in the network is very important, and we try and we do the same. And she also said that we should test out innovative solutions. And I hope this is something we can also now in the months and years to come to do as well. So welcome to the newcomers. And for those who know Mr. Atui, who was the former chair of the budget committee, and who was our ambassador for long-term mobility of apprentices under Erasmus, the new strand called Erasmus Pro. So you will be surprised that you will also see him as part of this video and a newcomer with his new organizations. So let's show the video now.
Hello, I'm Maria Ruiz, Director of Esmovia, a mobility provider based in Valencia, in Spain. We have joined the European Alliance for Apprenticeships because we want to contribute to the building of a European system of quality apprenticeships. And only in this way we can be in contact with other European partners, sharing opportunities, sharing information and good practices on how quality apprentices can be carried out. Thanks to this, we can participate in seminars and live talks and also in courses and be updated in the last trends of vocational education and training and specifically in the apprenticeship sector.
Hello everyone, my name is Konstantina Sokratus and I am the president of CCIF Cyprus. I'm very happy and at the same time very proud to be part of such an enabling initiative that is the European Alliance for Apprenticeship. Here at CCIF, we are excited and passionate to be part of the process that will shape Europe's workforce of tomorrow by investing in its youth today the best way we can.
I am Jean Arthuis, chairman of EuroApp Mobility, a non-profit organization established in June 2020 with the support of the French Ministry of Labour to remove the barriers to the long-term mobility of apprentices and other VET learners. Long-term mobility, that means at least 3 months and ideally 6 months. We wish to develop this immersion as an integral part of the apprenticeship contract in Europe. Our activities target obstacles that exist in various areas: legal, academic, financial, linguistic, psychological, and for the time being, sanitary. To fully accomplish our mission, we submitted our pledge to European Alliance for Apprenticeship because we needed to join a reliable and recognized network of European training organizations, policymakers, and companies, offering us a powerful capacity to exchange and promote good practice, the best practices. Let us give every VET learner a chance to go on long-term mobility in Europe. European Alliance for Apprenticeship is the perfect place to make this ambition reality.
Hello, my name is Özlem Kalkan. I represent Nevşehir Hacı Bektaş Veli University from Turkey. And we are very happy to be in the network of the European Alliance for Apprenticeships as a university. So our university is having 6,000 students who are following the vocational education tracks. So during their academic education of 2 years, which finally they receive an associate degree diploma, they are also having their apprenticeship education as a compulsory side of their academic education. So apprenticeship education in the companies are very important for our students as they directly after the school want to go to business life. This is the aim of the vocational education of tertiary level in Turkey. So the quality of the apprenticeship in the companies are very important for us. So our pledge based on the quality, based on the increasement of the quality of the apprenticeship that they have. So we hope to reach our aims, reach our goals, and hope to see you again. Bye.
Thank you very much, Norbert, for showing us that video. And thank you to all the newcomers that have joined the European Alliance for Apprenticeships. Thank you for your commitment. And we're very happy to have you as part of the family. So, as a final part of this high-level conference, I now have the great pleasure to hand the floor to Manuela Geleng, who is Director for Skills at DG Employment from the European Commission, and Srinivas Reddy, who is Chief of the Skills and Employability branch at the IILO, who will conclude our event with some closing remarks. I'd ask you both to keep it quite brief because we're running out of time a little bit. So hopefully you'll understand that. So Manuela, first, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As we come to the conclusion of these two very important days, perhaps let's reflect on what we have learned. So first of all, we heard about the forward-looking reforms in Belgium, Greece, China and Tanzania. We discussed the importance of social partners in the design, governance and implementation of apprenticeships. And indeed, social partners, European social partners, confirmed their full support to the European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeships and voiced a strong call for its implementation. We looked at excellent examples of national alliances, coalitions and networks from Spain and Germany, but also from India and South Africa. CEDEFOP, the European Training Foundation, and UNESCO had an interesting discussion on the future of apprenticeships. And last but not least, we heard the voice of apprentices and welcomed 10 new EAfA members who joined this community despite all the current uncertainties and difficulties. So it's now time to draw some lessons of these discussions. Indeed, yesterday was an important day because it marked 3 years of the adoption of the Council recommendation on the European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeships. We will have a report published later this year. So what I can already say now is that we see some major trends. First of all, the 7 criteria for learning and working conditions are in place in the majority of member states. As for the criteria on the framework conditions, further progress in implementation is needed. The framework proved to help member states in continuously developing their apprenticeship schemes, including on those criteria that were already there when the recommendation was adopted. Most importantly, I think the quality framework is confirmed to be extremely relevant and up to date. It remains our key instrument to enhance the quality apprenticeships in the EU. We will continue providing support to member states in the implementation of the framework, not least through the apprentices support services. We have just heard about the European Alliance and new members. It has been really a success story with 1 million opportunities now, but we can do more and should do more. We have heard the Commissioner this morning speaking about the fact that we need to create more green and digital apprenticeships because the green and digital transition requires apprentices. And as some professions deeply change, apprenticeships have the potential to reduce skill gaps by giving the individual the right skills. But the Commissioner Schmidt also stressed that apprenticeships should lead to quality jobs. This is really a very important point. The renewed alliance will foster also national alliances, and this is why it is important to continue to work at national, regional, local level in companies with social partners. Support to SME is also very important to provide a stable supply of quality and effective apprenticeships. We have now, as was recalled already several times this morning, unprecedented EU funding to mitigate the impacts of the crisis. So one such example is the Recovery and Resilience Facility that provides EU member states a unique opportunity to reform and invest in apprenticeships. So please make sure that your country's recovery plan do take into account apprenticeships, do provide investment for apprenticeships. As I said already, regional and local level are very important, and we are continuing to work together with the European network of cities for apprenticeships, and also looking for new links between the Renewed Alliance and the Centers for Vocational Excellence. EU social partners have been in the driving seat since the very beginning. And as you have heard yesterday, they work really very hard, and we work very hard with them to strengthen social dialogue for apprenticeships, also at national level, and to engage sectoral social dialogue committees. We also cooperate with the European Apprentices Network to ensure that the voice is heard. Coming now to the conclusion, I would like to say that in the past 2 days, we were also looking beyond Europe's borders. And I'm particularly grateful to IILO for having organized this conference. We need to promote work-based learning and apprenticeships in the EU and beyond the EU. That's why we are fully engaged in the ILO's work towards global standards on apprenticeships. To you participants in this conference, I would like also to thank you very much for all your contributions. They will feed into the Commission's report on the framework for quality and effective partnerships that will come out, as I said, later this year. And please, keep on and step up your efforts for quality apprenticeships, whether this is in your country, in your region, or in your company. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Manuela, for inspiring words. Okay, we'll go straight now to Srinivas. So Srinivas, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to offer the concluding remarks at this very important event. We have seen rich dialogue these 2 days, listening to a wide range of experiences from governments, employers, and workers' organizations, experts, and from multilateral institutions. Personally, I've gained so much knowledge and insights. The conference presented a great opportunity to share knowledge and experience within Europe, but also beyond Europe, as Manuela said, in other parts of the world, in Asia and Africa. We are particularly thankful to the European Commission for giving us this opportunity to join forces and collaborate with them to bring together these partners from outside Europe also. I would like to touch upon some major highlights and takeaways, complementing what Manuela has already captured it so well. Some of the major takeaways for follow-up action from outside, and the first and foremost thing that has come up very strikingly was the need to strengthen the role of social partners in apprenticeships at all levels of governance and in the design, monitoring, and evaluation of apprenticeship programs. To me, this message is very clear from this conference that this is one of the secrets of success for apprenticeships wherever it is succeeding, particularly in Europe. I think there is a lot of learning from this particular experience. Second, the need to modernize apprenticeships is also a very clear call. We heard the continuous improvements, innovations, and changes countries are making to apprenticeship systems. We heard many examples from Europe and elsewhere how they are constantly changing the course content, the design, delivery, and administration, matching the needs of the changing labor market, but also, most importantly, matching the changing aspirations of people and enterprises. Apprenticeships for digital transition and green transition is a great example to open apprenticeships in these new economics and also a wide range of other occupations in both public and private sectors, including IT, banking, and finance, for example. The key question and opportunity is to make apprenticeships inclusive, attractive to all individuals and enterprises in all sectors of economy. The third one I would like to highlight is the need for advocacy to promote a positive image and address the stigma question. We heard countries and experts talking about a number of measures they are taking to promote quality and effective apprenticeships. One of the ideas I want to highlight is how networks and alliances can play a positive role in bringing a positive image. The power of networks, like for example, the Global Apprenticeship Network GAN, for which IILO is also partner. Similarly, the European Alliance for Apprenticeships and many others that we have seen these 2 days are playing a very important role. So how can we promote, replicate, and collaborate with similar such networks in the world and in other parts of the world? From the Swiss example of 2/3 of school leavers choosing apprenticeships to some other countries in the developing world where apprenticeships are considered as a least preferred option, what can we do to boost the image of the quality apprenticeships? I think that's a key message. Then apprenticeships for all meaning including women and men, young and adults, from a lifelong learning perspective, breaking the gender stereotypes and promoting equal opportunities, including addressing the digital divide. The last couple of points also I want to highlight the need for partnerships and collaboration. The European Commission is a great example of partnership, offering partnerships. Commissioner Smith called in his remarks this morning for increased collaboration with the IILO, for example, in Africa. We are already collaborating with the European Commission in a number of countries in Africa to advance skills and apprenticeship work. For example, the Skills for Africa initiative and the skills and apprenticeship work in Mauritania, Bangladesh, and Jordan, and many other countries. We have very good collaboration with the European Commission. We are committed and looking forward to deepen and expand this collaboration to take the apprenticeships forward and replicate and implement in a major way in many of these countries, particularly in Africa. I also want to thank our partners, UNESCO, CEDEFO, PTF, GIZ, and many others who are very, very solid partners in advancing apprenticeships in close collaboration with IILO. This two-day conference, the insights and ideas that you all have shared are extremely useful for the IILO. I would like to thank all of you, all the speakers, and all the participants for your excellent inputs, which will certainly contribute to the discussion on a new international standard on apprenticeships that the International Labour Conference will examine during 2022 and 2023. The European Commission has been a very important partner for the IILO. I'm truly grateful to the European Commission for inviting us to co-organize this event, and I look forward to our future collaboration as we work towards our common goal of enhancing the quality and effective apprenticeships around the world. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Srinivas. So thank you to both of you, Manuela and Srinivas, for your inspiring concluding remarks from the point of view of the European Commission and the IILO. So thank you very much. Okay, so now we've arrived at the very end of our conference, and I want to thank all the speakers who've spoken here today, and of course those who participated yesterday as well. And I'd especially like to thank the members of the audience who have watched throughout these 2 days and participated actively in the discussion through our comments channel. Please keep an eye on our EAfA website for all information related to the follow-up to this event. There will be a report of the event, and the event has also been recorded and I think will be shared on the website. So, in conclusion, it's been a real pleasure. It's been very interesting and I've learned a lot, so I hope you have too. So thank you very much to everybody, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.